This episode is brought to you by Freight Farms. Freight Farms manufactures and sells the leading hydroponic container farm, the Greenery S. Built inside a 40-foot shipping container, the Greenery S uses innovative climate control technology paired with an IoT app called Farmhand to enable anyone to grow fresh food anywhere in the world. Visit freightfarms.com/edible activists to learn more.
Full Service Radio is proudly supported and hosted by Simplecast, the easiest way for a podcast creator to publish and distribute audio on the internet. For more information, visit simplecast.com.
Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line, D.C. On this show, you hear from the voices of dynamic Black people and people of color in the agriculture, food justice, and healing space as they share empowering food narratives and perspectives that stem from the land, all while exemplifying the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I am your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting on Full Service Radio. For today's show, I have a very special guest, Gabrielle Knox. She is a professional neighbor. I love that so much. And farmer whose work creates strategies to increase levels of community engagement on a neighbor level, designing community with neighbors to enhance the overall well-being of lifetime and legacy residents, while bridging resources across spectrums of sustainability and community throughout the North End neighborhood of Detroit. Gabrielle uses the soil, creative land use, and cooperatively owned models to create the future with an engaged community of Detroiters. Gab. Can I call you Gab? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, what up, though? Gab
what
is
up,
good.
though? I'm about to say, what do my Detroiters say? What up, though? Yes.
Yeah.
Detroit in the house. Everybody, Gab, everybody knows my love for Detroit. If you are a listener of this show, folks know I love Detroit. And so always, what up, though? So glad to have you.
Yes, thank you for having me. Yeah, you have some history and spending some time here with us in our story. So we have love for you as well, Melissa.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. And my heart is just beating because it's just, Detroit has been calling me back. You know, I have some folks hitting me up like, Mel, when you coming? I'm coming to Detroit. I'm coming back real soon. Mad love. Shout out to Detroit. So Gabrielle, we are going to explore your journey, your story as a Detroiter, a farmer, a builder, and an artist. And we know our artists. I'm an artist. I'm a creative, and we real sensitive about our shit. We really sensitive about our stuff. And so as an artist, I know that you are a natural storyteller. And so it's only right that I allow you to start your story where you want to start so that we can just start to learn more about Gabrielle, Gab, which I'm going to call you throughout the show. And so then we'll dive in, learn about you as a farmer, again, an artist, a builder. But I want you to open us up where you want us to start so that we can start to learn more about Gab and your background, who you are, where you come from, your roots. And so I'm gonna pass the mic on over to you, Gab. Who is Gab?
All right. So Gabby, which a lot of people call me either. Gabrielle Knox is also, in that realm of things. I grew up in Detroit. I'm from Detroit, right? From the West Side, Joy Road to be specific. Couple blocks east of Rouge Park. I grew up with my grandparents. Grew up walking to Rouge Park, being aware of the amount of land that was available to me in my neighborhoods. Rouge Park is a very large park that winds through several parts of the West Side, also encapsulating one of the largest farms in our city, D-Town Farms, situated within Rouge Park. I lived in that area till about 17, walking to places, walking to stores, walking through the park, remembering the trees, remembering collard greens that were growing in my grandparents' backyard, remembering community in a particular way. That image of community impressed on me in a particular way. Knowing my neighbors, having friends all up and down the block that I was trusted to be safe with, right? I can go to their house and throughout the day hang out with them, and know that their parents were taking care of me, and that the conversation between our parents was present. Um, yeah, I grew up on the West Side. I think as a Detroiter, um, growing up in these communities, and at a certain point being aware that there's so many communities, right? When you say builder, when you say artist, when you say neighbor, right? There's so many different communities that we're a part of and we coexist in, right? And really at the point of 18 was me growing and also accessing more communities than just my family, right? And just that particular block that I grew up in. I began to work in spaces that kind of made me uncomfortable, made me question if what I wanted to do with myself and what I was skilled at, and very quickly began to run into these communities of people who were introducing me to um, manifesting. They were introducing me to their creations
Mm,
and how that had affected other people. Communities of poets, communities of African-centered stories, African-centered businesses, right? Events, seeing these communities of dancers and drummers and people who float throughout these different events, um, and and how those people made that their life, right? Um, at the age of 18, 19, going into these spaces, one of the first spaces being a museum located in Detroit on Grand Boulevard and Grand River, owned by Oliami Dabbles and Bad African Beat Museum. Going into that space, for example, having conversation with an elder and elders who are willing to share what their experience is. A lot of those things opened up community for me first. There was multiple communities to be a part of, both coexist in and to learn from.
wow. Would you say that, and I love how you shouting out all these street names in Detroit and it's just resonating, just so many memories. You know, Detroit is a large city, and I remember just trekking through some of those neighborhoods and Grand Boulevard, just all familiar, just makes me want to go back instantly. But you know, there's so many. Oh my gosh, Detroit is like creative mecca. Oh my gosh. Do you feel like being a Detroiter, like folks who are like born and bred like Detroit, they are birthed into this like this natural as a natural creative because it's just so like it's just like so filled with creativity and you know and just expression and folks who are grounded in themselves, black folks who are grounded in themselves. Do you feel like that's just natural for those who are from Detroit? Or you still feel like you had to like find your creativity or find yourself in that creative space, like being from Detroit?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both, right?
Mhm,
Because there is sometimes this inescapable societal pressure, right? That
mhm.
comes with capitalism, that comes with things that we live in, um, that inform us to sometimes not tap into those parts of ourselves, right? I think being born in Detroit forces you to create, absolutely. But do we act those things out? Do we live those things out? And do we trust ourselves in doing that? And a lot of times, that inspiration, at least I can speak for me, a lot of times that came from seeing other people who had stepped out on that, right, at the age of 18, 19, when I was seeing these people, seeing them having stepped out on that and knowing what I have inside myself. And that gives activation to it, in a way that, again, it is a battle, right? It's a battle to trust yourself as an artist, as a builder, as a creator, as an entrepreneur, as someone who's creating something new, in our lifetime, in a lot of ways. I think it is definitely inside Detroiters that are born here, but as an artist, understanding that it is a real thing. Like, this is not just something that I feel, right? There's history of this being taken to the world. There's history of this being the soundtrack to the world. It's history of our voices and our stories doing these things. History, knowing that, and again, talking to elders who are willing to share their stories and their journeys, helps to affirm that, I think.
Wow. So at what point did you decide that you wanted to really dig in to the earth and start growing, not only for yourself, but for community, for neighbors? At what point do you decide, okay, like or if this is something that, your family had done previously and it was just kind of like siloed and, you said, okay, like I'm going to start growing food. But at what point did you said, you know what, this growing and farming thing, like this is it. This is it. Because you've been doing that for a while, for a while. So what was that? What was that catalyst?
That was early on. It was early on. I was saying that the awareness of these different communities, kind of breaking away from my own, societal, and my own investment in capitalism. And so, it was a conversation for myself. If I'm gonna quit this job that I'm working, and I worked a job for over 6 years, hospital, where I was coordinating patient support system, and very engaged and aware of how to work that job to the point that I was comfortable in it. But it was not, and I will say, but it was not what would make me happy, right? So that was the question already, and then it was like, what do I do next? What do I do next? Part of that fear was believing that if I did not have money and I didn't have these things that this job was providing me, then I would lose resources. I would lose the ability to survive. I will say, it's a term that I've heard very recently, like a legacy farmer. Being someone who did have family who farmed, right, and having some knowledge of it, realizing that there was a community of people, again, like running into these communities that were providing resources, right, resource programs, Keep Growing Detroit, and these organizations that were doing these things. That for me, one of the decisions I needed to make was to invest in this, right, for myself and for the knowledge it would bring me, for the security, sustainability that would bring me, but also for participating in these communities that I was seeing growing 10 to 12 years ago, and already large conversations internationally about Detroit and urban farming. And so for me, it was a very logical decision that I was making, and it was grounded in wanting to secure myself by having this knowledge, by reawakening this knowledge rather, and contributing to this community that I see doing very good for community, right? Beautifying areas, providing information, providing food in spaces where the local grocery store is miles away. Doing things that became conversations for me that I had never had.
In Detroit, obviously, there's a lot of vacant lands and properties and blight, and to the good work of Gab and Detroiters. And, I love this whole folks coming together to beautify, Detroit, a city that's already beautiful. And that's just because I love Detroit. But,
Mm.
coming up and walking those streets and seeing the land that was not put to use, seeing the land that was blighted, seeing the land that obviously controlled not by the community or the neighbors, even if it was some like a piece of land like right next to you. Was there also like that drive to really put that land to use? Not even, I mean, yes, like, farming and growing, there's the community engagement aspect of it, but just taking that a step further and say, no, we're gonna we're gonna drop some seeds all over. Was that drive there? Just you being a Detroiter and seeing that land not being used, because even where I am in the DC area, just even in counties, I'm seeing land, and even if it's cleared, nothing there, just a parking lot, and it's been sitting there for years, and I'm like, that can feed somebody, but it's not being put to use.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what did that do for you?
No, absolutely. So, I was living at this time, I was a college student, and I had a large lot next door to me, and I had access to land.
Mm,
It's a conversation, right? Because actually having access to land in a city where there is so much land is actually difficult sometimes for individuals. And the movement to liberate land and to begin to just create on that land um, is what people are doing, right? Um, Outside of ownership, outside of who owns this, it is like this is the land next to me, and I have to take care of it because it is land, right? Because it's adjacent to me. So there's a lot of people who have been taking care of land for several years, for generations that they don't own, but they build on, but they grow on, but they
wow.
do on because it's in their vicinity and nothing else is happening with it, right? So that liberation is definitely already being done, and that is the step that I took, right? Learning from other people. I had a lot next door to me, and I activated it. I used a lot of materials within the city, recycled parking rails, recycled bricks, recycled pallets and materials, already having some knowledge of building. And I created a garden there and grew so much to the point where, which is what people find, you grow so much that even if it wasn't your intention, begin to grow for community because you
Mm,
have so much, and now you find yourself passing it out, or selling it, or figuring out how to get this out. Um,
wow.
and so, in that time, I found myself doing that, but also all the people I was working with. 90s Knowledge Cafe as a poet. You can have conversations with local businesses and small businesses and figure out what their needs are. Right? They sell sandwiches, they sell small salads, they sell fish and chicken. They have a front space with bricks that flowers could grow. How do you spread that conversation into beautifying other spaces?
Mm,
So that became a major conversation for me. Going to places, actually working there, and visiting that place and stewarding that land or that box or that raised bed that I would propose in places that didn't have them, right? As something that could help their business, or something that could just add to beautifying that space. So
wow.
Nandi's, dabbles, lots of places, including my own garden, I began to manage and travel to, in order to just be doing it, right? I began to love to do it. So it was really about loving to do it, be in this land, and like you said, activating spaces that you look at and you're like, there could be food growing there, having those conversations with the people, starting with me, with people that were already in my
And it wasn't intrusive. And you weren't intruding, and you weren't, and that's when and I want to speak to but that is the professional neighbor, which I want you to break down the definition of the professional neighbor, but I feel like you just really just explained it all. And it's just beyond just, sitting next door to someone, but engaging and dialoguing with the folks, the corner stores and the restaurants that also sit in the neighborhood. and not, you're not just coming in, and that's a lot happening. That's a lot happening. Outsiders are coming in, intruding in areas where you don't belong, in areas where you feel like you want to, enhance, but it's all for capital gain. And so when I think about when we started off the show Professional Neighbor, I loved it so much. It spoke so much to me. And that really just is the epitome, right? And we can
Yeah.
elaborate more of the professional neighbor and that
Yeah.
engagement.
Well, no, absolutely. That is it, right? Is coming in with. I like to think about it on the block that I live on, and in a lot of spaces that all these individuals have stories, they have skills, they have things that they bring onto the block, whether or not that's in conversation, right? Whether or not their skills are being shared, whether or not you know that your neighbor works for, a museum somewhere, or you know that this neighbor does this. Everyone's holding these skills, and that's an opportunity as someone who identifies as a professional neighbor to investigate that, right? To go to
Mm.
these spaces and share myself with them, and figure out how much space we all need to exist, right? In that space where there is no intruding, but there's engagement. There's asking where you fit in a very vulnerable and honest space.
Wow. 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 And I appreciate, like, one of the things that that I read on, because I'm a stalker on Instagram, because I love y'all. Y'all be doing like just really amazing work, is that one of the most challenging things is, more than stewarding the land, is the community engagement and the strategy. And it's so easy for people to just toss those words out there and say, we need to be engaged and we need to pull the community together. And we're all about building a community, but they're just words and folks really don't know how to do that. So pushing that, I appreciate that you said that. I don't know that I've ever had anybody, or I've actually heard anybody actually really confess to that. Like, we talk about building community, we talk about engagement, but we just push it out as if it's this easy thing to do, and just going back to, where do I fit in? And that's all a part of the strategy. And so I appreciate you just putting that out there, because I can only imagine, as a professional neighbor, like, really pulling folks together. It's a task.
Yeah, I mean, so in this journey, like, I'm picking up all these things and meeting these people, farming, artists, things, and I'm invited to this block based on um, the existence of this block already, the activation of this block already, and the conversations that are already happening on this block. And what that looks like is that you have in Detroit several homes that um, may be vacant. They may be in the process of going to the land bank. They may belong to the land bank. They
Mm-hmm.
may be owned by someone outside of Detroit. You may have several homes that are
Mm.
not currently housing neighbors or residents. So on this block, as an example, um, people were able to mobilize, purchase some of these homes with the intention on having a conversation about who goes into these. And so walking into this space, right, that was inviting me as a storyteller, as a creator, as a farmer, to exist there. That conversation for me became very real and very important, to meet this group of people and these neighbors who exist on this block, and have varying levels of engagement with each other, but are looking for me to add to that. Um, and so, I mean, I've been here for about 6 years, and that journey has looked like me introducing myself to this space, and to each neighbor, with my intention, coming here with the intention on taking my house and making it into a library, a public space for people to come to,
Oh, I think we lost her.
having a conversation about what makes people comfortable in that. And then also being open and to understand what the similarities and what the alignments may be within those neighbors. and how do we grow that? Grow that system that gives us all space to exist together. How do we grow that system that maybe answers some conversations about the things that we need and things that we want inside of our homes? And those conversations can be more, whether that is groceries, whether that is servicing our homes and the work that we may need, growing those conversations to the point where we are comfortable communicating, figuring out strategies together.
That is so
That,
beautiful.
that for me has opened up businesses, cooperatively modeled businesses, like building cooperatively. Talk about has opened up other neighbors identifying as professional neighbors and taking on what that looks like, bringing their skills to the table, be that have a lawnmower and I can cut the garden, or I'm also an agricultural invested in the food world. There's a lot of conversation that has begun to come out when we open ourselves up to sharing who we are as neighbors, and that's one thing I've definitely been able to learn in this space.
Beautiful. And growing conversations, not just growing food, but growing conversations, professional neighbor. I love it. I love it. All right, y'all, we're going to take a really quick break and we'll be right back. You're listening to Perfect Day, produced by Artists Authentic. For more of Authentic's work, visit allornothingstudios.com. All right, peace. Welcome back to the show. So excited. I've been chatting with the amazing Gabrielle Knox, aka Gab from Detroit. What up, though, Gab?
What up, though? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Gab is a professional neighbor. She's a farmer. She is a builder. And we've just had some really great conversations, talking about community engagement, growing conversations, farming, land use. And we're actually about to jump even further into the building aspect, because Gab has an awesome company, and she just mentioned previously before we took the break about co-ops. And so really we're going to focus the second half of this conversation about her company, Building Cooperatively, and the model and the vision. And you just said something that sparked me even more, Gab, was that whole model, but also having folks in that space who have that agriculture background, which is so key to infrastructure and using the land creatively and knowing how to treat the land, and not, you're not just some construction company or building company that's just there just to destroy the land, and just, which is happening all around, but having that attention and care to the land. And so I'm just excited to learn more about your company and the vision, and when you all got started, and just your crew, because y'all are out here working, and I love it.
Yeah, so centering again, block. This has been a conversation when we talk about neighbors and needs. It's been a conversation. It's been something that we were already engaging with, be that sharing tools and resources, be that gathering together to work, be one person's project or another person's project, and doing that work together, kind of learning that together, realizing that a lot of neighbors either were in homes that they've lived in for years that needed work, or they were neighbors that had recently bought homes from the land bank. So, and what that means is it is a home that was given back to the city that they're holding to sell back to individuals in the neighborhood. Those homes come in varying stages of um, of of existence, right? Some of them have no bathroom structures, have no kitchen structures, have had all of the plumbing taken out of them, need wiring done over because they're so old. These homes can be over 100 years old, have old knob and tube, and need wiring redone. So this is a large conversation within the block as neighbors was fixing each other's homes.
Mm.
We found a group that was in a newspaper, literally putting a call out to try to teach people how to do historic restoration. And this group was Michigan Historic Preservation Network out of Lansing. And the call basically was saying that we're looking to restore historic property. We would like to gather 10 to 12 individuals and teach them this work. We'll bring in skilled old timers essentially that have been doing plaster work, that have been doing leaded glass and restoring wood windows and wood floors on these historic 100-year-old homes their entire lives, right? And we'll bring them in and teach this to an individual, to individuals in the Detroit area. So we've seen that and organized ourselves as neighbors with one of our other neighbors who has a nonprofit and figured out how to situate ourselves to accept this project. We also talked about who should be in this class, who on our block was interested, and how to hold space for us being able to determine what that class could look like. With the understanding that you could hold a class in Detroit and those individuals that are in that class could be from all over the state of Michigan. So making sure that those people would be Detroiters, residents of Detroit, and that if we were going to host this on our block and we would be the historic location that they would be restoring, that we would also get a chance to determine who, or at least put some names into that pool. Right? And so we did that. We held space for people, and a lot of those people were people within this neighborhood of the North End, people that were neighbors of this block, very intentionally holding space for that to be a conversation afterwards. Throughout this class, we're giving business classes through Build Institute and through some of the organizations around here, told about the different structures of models and businesses, told about insurance and all these things that we would have to go into if, say, we chose to take this education and build a business afterwards. And so taking that and also, the class going, all these people leaving, and the individuals that stayed, all still being people who were local in the North End, all still being people who were in some form neighbors. It was very easy to continue to have that conversation, right? To
Mm-hmm.
back up and talk about what do we do with this education that we've received? How do we potentially make a new economy that feeds back into our neighborhood, feeds back into us, feeds back into our personal projects? And the best way for us was to think about cooperative building, right? Cooperative building models and structures. And what that means for us is that each individual who is a member of Building Cooperatively is both an owner of the company as well as who works, right? So they're a worker owner of our company.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um, So, you think about the way a lot of community organizations and even businesses that are for profit are structured. Typically, there's boards, there's directors, there's founders, there's presidents, there's chairs, there's all these things that are particular models of building and making decisions within a business. For us, right, there is just membership with equal votage, with unanimous decisions, with us all taking in and doing that work to come to conclusions and bring everyone to understanding on the decisions that we make, specifically with the intention on creating a new, pushing forward some of the old historic ways of doing business, but also some new models of moving away from hierarchies, right? Moving away business models that are top down in a lot of ways. How do we have conversations sharing these resources with individuals? So even as we have a business that has roughly 6 individuals in it, we are working with individuals that are neighbors, friends, who are also working on their homes, who have varying levels of skill in the trades, but using our business as a way to train them, give them opportunity, as well as grow them as business owners with us.
Wow. Do you feel like that there has been, because I know of a couple farmers and growers who have actually made this natural transition over into the co-ops and building with very similar models and visions, which I think is just such a natural transition. Do you feel like you're seeing more of that? Just because you have like that farming infrastructure build, experience. Do you feel like you're seeing a lot more of that? Just because it just seems like a natural transition to, hey, like we're building and growing, but we're gonna take this up to a whole nother level. Are you seeing a lot more of that? If not even just in Detroit necessarily, but just like all over?
I am, and it is. I would say so. When we started off 3 years ago, roughly 3 years ago, a little bit more than that, um, there was already a community of people who had resources to support us, right? So that I think that takes some foresight from those individuals. There's been a lot of lawyers, a lot of funding organizations that have been ready for that switch, right? And so we found that there was already a foundation for it in our city. Already people ready to have that conversation with us, and also help us in making some decisions and embarking on a new business model for all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
There has this year been almost like a meet and greet, like reunion of the co-ops that went down. And it is another one planned for this month of July. So there's one last month and there's one this month being hosted by the Community Wealth Fund, who does a lot more than funding. They also help you in a lot of your internal business. How do you develop your bylaws and what does it say to reflect being a co-op? So they do a lot of hands-on work, do like a boot camp for new people who have ideas that they want to make into co-ops. So they play a large hand in supporting the community of co-ops. But even just at that meet and greet and this cooperative reunion, if you will, there's so many individuals, right, that were present that have new growing cleaners, people that are doing plant transplants and have that going, and they've partnered with local farms to do that. A lot of really, really beautiful growing cooperatives. In that space, we were the elder cooperative at 3 years. So just to speak to that growth over the last 3 years, there is a lot more people when they consider making and creating a new economy, they're thinking about how to model that and how to share that ownership.
Wow. And being in this space, has it challenged you to find creative ways on how to use the land? Because going from farming or the garden beds to now again building structures. 'Cause y'all out there doing it, all right? I be from the side like, all right, y'all need water? You need a snack? I got you, boo. All right, but you don't want to put a hammer in my hand, okay? No. You don't want to do that.
I hear that. I hear that.
But it
um,
challenged you all to think of creative ways on how to use the land, being in like this builder space now? Or do you feel like you've brought that over with the agriculture knowledge that you had previously?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Brought it over with the agricultural knowledge,
Yeah.
but also I think it challenges you to get creative about, for me at least, bringing all those things together, right? So as a builder, I can't forget community. I can't forget farming, right? So if in my practices as a builder, the way that I approach lead paint, the way that I approach certain things, right, is thinking about the environment, is thinking about
Mm,
community. When I think about land use, and I think about my opportunity to build with that knowledge, I'm still thinking about how do you make spaces that are engageable to community, like that will welcome people, right? So even our space in our property, we built a dome, right, in the garden. And honestly, it takes a lot of space out of the garden, um, in the lot where the garden is situated. But the amount of people that gather in that dome, as it being a structure, as it being some space that you can sit down on the ground, in the grass, you can hang a hammock. You can do
mm,
all these different things, right? It's like, how do I use that to um, add to that land, right? Add and bring people into that land for the ultimate goal of joy, right? Of joy and engagement. While they're there, we can have a conversation about gardening, right? While we're there, we can walk around into the flowers, but using that building to just enhance the goal of increasing engagement and building things that people want to actually see.
mm. And pulling that artistry
Yeah,
into everything as well. The
yeah.
poetry, which I want to just talk about for a bit. There's so many other things I want to talk to you about, Gab, but I'm running out of time. You gotta come back to the show. I'm coming to Detroit, and we gonna sit on the block, and I'm gonna have my recorder. We can do it that way.
Yeah, sit on the block. Sit on the block.
All day. But yes, pulling in that artistry. It's all connected. Creating
Yeah,
those spaces for expression,
yeah,
that engagement. I
yeah.
love that so much. And you're you writer, poet. What don't you do, Gab?
I'm out here learning. I'm out here
Yeah.
learning and constantly trying to figure out how these all these things go together.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
how do they, not to just be doing things, right? But
yeah.
things that interest me, things that also add um, what brings me passion and encourage my community.
Yeah. Why does Detroit mean so much to you at your
Why does
core?
Detroit mean so much to me? I would say, in a lot of ways, it's no different than anyone maybe who grew up in a space and has memories
Mm,
that were enjoyable, that has a story that they can tell about. And watching this grow, watching the city grow and change, um, and really realizing that this land is ours. The space is ours. The space that becomes encouraging, right? Well, as I watch Detroit grow, I get to watch these times. I get to watch these things, but also understand that it's ours, and we. There's so many examples, including myself, of people who can make statements, can affect change, can do things that last, benefit, and bring in a lot of spaces those things that we love about Detroit. Um, I think for me, being able to work work and identify as a person who is doing work that people want to talk about in a place. Um, but also at my core, when I say engagement, like do things that my cousin can come to, right? And
mm,
not on this level, this academic level, even if that is a part of my work, right? And that happens. But center myself in making spaces that resonate and reflect that love for Detroit, that people that I know, either whether they've forgotten it, whether they aren't in Detroit anymore, whether they may be in a space where they feel down about the progression or they feel whatever, knowing that myself, people within my community, these relationships that we have, these multiple communities can highlight that, continually highlight that, and bring that for people who live here. It's a thing that I'll always love.
Beauty, 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 beauty. Gab, it has been a pleasure. There's so many other things I want to ask you, but I got to come to the block. Part 2, block.
Come through.
I'm gonna be there. I'm
You
gonna be
gotta
there.
you gotta set a day and a half aside, at least.
I'm coming for I'm coming to Detroit. I'm there for a week or 2.
All right, I'm talking about on the block specifically.
On the block. Oh yeah, yes.
You get kind of lost. There's so many spaces, you know, and that are growing. You know, we recently had an event that was an example of that, right? Just the expansion of our use of land and other people being able to offer and trust the community that we're bringing into this residential space.
Oh, I love that.
And yeah, so come through.
I'm there. I am there. Well, before we wrap up, and before we get into our rapid fire, I want 2 things. I want to know tell folks where to find you. And 2, tell folks how they can support your company building cooperatively. 2 things. And when I say y'all support, I mean support, not like email, send my yeah, we want the blessings, but also money goes a little further too. So, but we want to support and we want to amplify what you're doing, what your team is doing. So we want to back you.
No doubt. All right. Okay. You can find me on the Instagram at Gab_be smooth. You can find me and Building Cooperatively at buildingcooperatively.com or at Gmail for inquiries about work. We focus mainly on historic restoration, wood floors, removing paint off trim, restoring trim, elements, molding, and elements of homes that, when I say historic, are not necessarily in historic neighborhoods, but are old, over 100 years old, that have historic elements of architecture inside of them. And in cities, Black cities, typically there's a lot of that. There's a lot of old homes and historic homes that need work. To support us, honestly, having conversation about cooperatives, about business models, about us locally in Detroit, if you know someone who needs that kind of work. Financially, we have a studio that is owned by our neighbors that we work out of and do a lot of our work on. That is also on our block and we take care of, we steward. It's over 100 years old. It has a lot of really amazing elements, but it needs a lot of work. If you are able to fund that and or be a part of a team of builders to do work to develop and restore this historic property, we would love conversation. We would love to approach that process with you. You can email us again at buildingcooperatively@gmail.
Bet. All right, Gab, you ready for this rapid fire?
Rapid fire me.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, Gab, what is your favorite veggie or fruit?
Favorite veggie or fruit? Papaya. It has to be cold.
Ooh, and Gab was specific. Papaya that needs to be cold.
It gotta be cold. Yep.
All right. Flavor profile: sweet, spicy, sour, salty, savory, or bitter?
I'm savory. I'm savory for breakfast.
Okay.
Kind of savory, you know.
All right. All right. Last artist or podcast you listen to? I'm talking like spare the moment. You just jamming out to something. Like what were you rocking out to before you hopped on with me?
Oh shit. Okay. Definitely That Shit by Megan Thee Stallion. Definitely.
All right, man. All right, She's like Meg, but
And
I like Ray. I like Meg.
I listen. This podcast is actually saved to my iPhone
Oh,
little Apple situation.
I
But
appreciate
another
it.
podcast just because it's amazing, and I don't know if you've heard it. LeVar Burton reads.
No, I gotta check that out. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
that. I listen to a ton of podcasts, y'all. Don't get it twisted. It's actually just mental therapy for me just to hear people talk. Smart people talk.
yeah. And LeVar Burton, Reading Rainbow Guy, he got a good voice. They've
Yes.
been doing this.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. All right. Who are you rooting for these days? It gonna be anybody. Who are you rooting for?
Anybody? I'm rooting for Detroiters. I'm rooting
Yeah.
for I'm rooting for people who choosing joy. Um, I'm rooting for people that shedding things, that's growing and shedding and deciding that, things things in their way towards freedom,
Mm.
that they need to release it. People that are on futurist shit, or organizers, and activists that are rooted in community, lovers, yeah, all that.
Ooh, I love that. What a way to end the show. I love it. All right. Thank y'all for tuning in. Peace. Thanks for tuning in. You can catch today's episode on fullserviceradio.org as well as iTunes and Spotify. Be sure to follow Food Talks in Color, that's just the letter N, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for all updates. Are you an edible activist? Sure you are. Come join me on the show. Just shoot me a DM on the gram or connect with me at foodtalksincolor.com. And if you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, let's connect. Peace and blessings. And remember, in the words of Baba Tariq Adunu, there is no culture without agriculture.